everybody, we're back here painting Geronimo. We're on part 3 of painting the skin tones. Last time we did the tonalities, and we did just one layer of some of the Native American flesh tones on top. We just have a lot of these browns on our palette here that will form some of the brown tones of the skin. And we want to lay these on really translucently, so that we can see the tonalities, the bright colors that we've hidden in there. We really want to see those coming through. So we don't want to lose them. So for that reason, we're going to add a lot of water to our paints and also use some pretty translucent paint and inks. So here on the right hand side we have an array of inks from FW, and then some Holbein acrylics at the top. Most of these are earth tones at the top, so they can be pretty opaque. So we really want to just water them down like that. You can kind of see, draw them out over the wet palette and water them down. And just have a little bit of paint on your brush. You can see how translucent some of that white showing through. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. Alright, so we can really start anywhere we want, but we're just going to choose one of these colors. I think that this dark brown here, really vibrant brown, we'll use that sort of, it's very vibrant, so we might want to use it on the side that's getting a lot of the light. And just lay in some glaze. It's also pretty red, so you can see the red of the cheeks really shows through. Just gotta glaze in some of this color. Just got a little bit of crop there. Yeah, we can just switch up the colors here. Maybe use a little bit of this more orangey brown for the forehead. It's receiving a lot of light, and we want that yellow to still show through. There we go. By brushing in just one direction, you can concentrate the glaze, as you might have seen in some of the blending videos. I'll put some of that on the side of his nose here too. Yeah. Now maybe it's looking more like a real, on our way to more of a natural skin tone. We can still see all of those tones underneath altering that skin tone. So you just have a huge variety of tones and also a lot of realism. Man, we use a brown that's a bit more desaturated, maybe like this raw sienna. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of the reddish brown though. Maybe this burnt umber as well. Yeah, mix that in with that. There we go. That can be kind of painted over, sort of, where we have some of our blue tones. You should allow yourself to have some creativity and just, you don't have to use these particular colors. You can choose your own paint colors, and this works with even Caucasian flesh tones as well. You would just using different flesh tones, but for the native skin we're using these earth tones. And we have this red earth color. I'm just going to water it down quite a lot, even though it's like an ink. This will really add a lot of red in. Let's see if that looks good. Oh yeah. Yep. That's what that needed. maybe too much there. Just remove that. There we go. Yeah, don't want to overdo it. I need some on this cheek too. And just apply multiple layers. We use a few different tones of the paint mixed with the ink. Just allow your imagination to run wild here. And apply those layers very thinly, just a tint. And this way we don't have to make up a ton of different colors. They're making the colors, all the various tonalities, through just a combination of circumstances. You know, you have your tones underneath, and then you have your overlayers, and the way they combine create a lot of variety. That really makes that object interesting, and the eye wants to look at it more because it has so many different tones in it. You don't have to cover the whole surface with every color. You use it just to create deeper shadows, maybe. Can't really create too many highlights. Now this cheek is a little bit too red in my opinion. So what we can do is use a little bit of this green, mix that with brownish red. Yeah, it kind of creates a neutral tone. We can desaturate with that. The green laid over the red kind of dulls it a little bit and looks more natural. These desaturated colors will also sort of recede into the background or into the shadows. So you can use the green to desaturate his red skin in the shadows. It'll look softer and more subtle than if you were to use a dark brown or a black or something like that. Yeah, you can use that mixture of green and brown to make these deep shadow colors. It'll be a better variety than if you were to just use a dark black or something like that to make the shadows. You can even paint in a bit of a drop shadow from the hair. That hair would kind of cast a shadow on his head. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself. You'd be surprised the effects you can achieve. If you just try. And if you don't succeed 100%, you'll have learned something anyways. I think there's just too much contrast. This is too red. Maybe we should make this a little bit redder to make them look like they're one flesh tone. So we'll take that Terra Rosa again. Just a little tiny bit on the brush. And then we can wire it down more. This color is kind of the color of the American Southwest, that red rock. As you start applying layers, each one needs to be thinner than the last, so make sure that you don't cover up your tonalities. Might decide to just start adding some texture with these layers. Maybe he has a worn skin. We can start adding some of those creases in on top now. Now that we have our general skin tone and fade in there, we'll just add those in. Yeah, maybe we should use a smaller brush. Maybe one of these Artist Opus brushes. They're really good for freehand. I'm going to use the size 0 here and some burnt umber. Add those little details in. Give him a really creased forehead. to the little details we can put in here. But notice how we do them. Once we have our big picture stuff in, you add your details too early, you can get boxed in. Because once you add your details in, it's harder to make changes. If you add them in too early, you might not be able to get that subtle shifts in color subtlety to the flesh. Starting to see the ears added on to Arlo here, and years of warring. This takes some practice. It would be good to look at some photos of really old and worn skin. Try to see where those creases start, where and where they stop too. Usually they start where the face can be contorted and pinched, and they might become less distinct in areas where the flesh is very thick, like the cheeks and that sort of thing. Hopefully we can see that. Maybe we'll use a darker color, a sepia, for those dark creases within the shadow area. Charles had a hard life. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Now we can even make those deeper and deeper. Come in with the sepia tone. Just tiny dots. The creases are deepest. Don't forget to load your brush up well with a lot of paint, a lot of ink. Sometimes people don't load their brush up enough to if they're trying to be really detailed, they might not have a lot of paint in the brush, but this actually, it makes it more difficult because there isn't enough flow. Paint doesn't like to flow in that case. Might just be able to get only a few brush strokes then. Just a little dot in the corners of these gives the impression that they're even deeper. Doesn't take much. You don't want to make the lines too distinct. If they're too distinct, they'll look artificial. To make a nice tapering line, you want to pull away with your brush. So as you start your line, you'll pull away your pressure. Like that. Create some nice taper. Hopefully the road noise isn't too annoying for people. I live in kind of the middle of downtown, or in Seattle, and sometimes there's trucks coming through here, so sorry about that if you can hear it. I'm just adding a few more little glaze layers. Give us a bit more dimensionality, maybe a bit more shadow on the sides of the face. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I think we like all that, don't we? Okay. I think we just need to do maybe some more work on this hair. I think I'm going to use some of these dark colored inks. This is like some black ink, some Payne's Gray ink. Just kind of darken the hair down. But first, maybe put some extra lines in here. There we go. Yeah. You don't want to connect the lines entirely because there's this highlight going down through there. Just starting there, in each of these crevices, and just adding some lines. Just quickly moving away over there, yeah. maybe use that color and add some eyebrows now. Now the eyebrow always follows this crease of the head. You don't want to put any eyebrow lower or higher. Just want to follow this crease. Yeah, I think that's adding some character to him. Alright, let's do a little bit more on the hair. And this is using that Payne's Gray ink, just nice bluish black. Add a bit more depth and dimension to the hair. You're just taking the shadows that you have already and making them deeper and sort of tapering the edge. Tapering the end of each of these lines by pulling away with your brush. Once you get the hang of it, you can draw a lot of lines in a short amount of time. Just by repeating the motion of the brush at the correct depth. There we go. Now I might just give it a thin glaze to tie it all together. I think I might use a sepia mixed with a little bit of the Payne's Gray to get the color. We're just going to lay this down over the whole thing. Maybe mix in a little tiny bit of paint just to give it a bit more tooth. Otherwise it might flow around a little bit too much. I want that hair to look really dark, but still have sort of the sheen, the appearance of a sheen to it. This glaze just ties everything together. This glaze just ties everything together. Alright, he's looking pretty good. I'm just going to use this black just to kind of paint in his... Yeah, he's looking pretty good here. Alright, now that the skin's looking really nice here, we're going to do the eyes and some details. Put in those wrinkles, and we're going to add some highlights to those. And just spiff things up, maybe, and then maybe finish up the rest of the miniature. So, we'll start with the eyes. And one thing that's really important to remember is that the eyes are never white. You never want to use titanium white or a really bright white for the eyes. It's very unnatural. In fact, we're going to use kind of a taupe color, maybe an off-white for these eyes. I will start with the titanium white here, but we're going to mix some brown in with it. Now, let's mix that color in, line it like that. I'm just going to mix a little bit of black in to give it, to kind of gray it down a little bit. We'll use that for the base color of our eyes. Now before we use that mix, sometimes there can be a lot of red around the eyes. It can look, you can see the red of the blood around the eyes. So we're going to paint that in first, and then when we paint our white in, we'll kind of subtract from that. Hopefully that makes sense, but we're going to just mix up a blood color here. A really bright crimson blood. Maybe a little bit of brown mixed in. Blood has a little bit of brown mixed in. There we go. There we go. So we'll use that for our blood color. So you start with painting the blood around the rim of the eyes. Doesn't matter if you get any on the interior part of the eye, so we're going to cover that up. Most of this red is going to be subtracted away in the next step, you'll see. Right now we take our eye color we mixed up earlier. We're going to paint the eyes. And paint the cornea. So that red's still wet. Gotta wait for that red to dry here. So while we wait for that red to dry, let's just do some highlights on some of these wrinkles. We can take our white again, mix up a very light color. Maybe a little burnt sienna, a little raw sienna. There we go. Just add some highlights to those artificial lines we added before, the extra details. Makes them look three-dimensional. It's these little details that can really wow your audience. And they're fun to do once you get the hang of it. Alright, let's do some more. That red's still drying. And we can just kind of do some general lights as well. And if this makes things too bright, if you look at it and it looks too bright, you can always do another glaze layer. You might actually end up doing that a little bit. We're just adding subtlety here. So it's okay to push it a bit higher. Do a very light glaze to integrate the layer you just added. I'll show you that little glaze bit here in just a moment. Let me just put these in here. Okay, we're just going to do a little bit of glaze to integrate that, just to make sure that it doesn't look too stark. We don't want them to get pale on us. We don't want them to start to look pale because you know, look less Native American and more Caucasian, and that would be kind of weird. So that's why we want to do these little glazes to bring the skin tone back down to where it should be. Oh yeah, I like those little details we added. I think the red around his eyes is dry now, so we can get back to painting these eyes. Let's do that. Make sure the color you're using is actually much dark enough. Okay. Now it can be good to use the point of your brush as an aid. Oh. Sometimes you can make a mistake like that. Well, it's still wet. We can pull that out. Let's just do that. Yeah, that way we can kind of fix that mistake and then just get back to business. And I say that white is even a little bit too bright. It almost looks as if his eyes are glowing. So I'm going to give it a little bit of gray to dull it down. That's okay. Mix up a little dusky gray. And darken this down a little bit. Just in the corners. Yeah. There we go. A little more on this side. Yeah. So that looks pretty good. Alright, next we delineate where the iris is going to be. I think we'll do that with a little bit of sepia paint mixed with black. So it's a dark color. You can just use black if you want. I'm going to have Geronimo. Now, this is where we want to make a choice. Is he going to be looking into the light or into the darkness? I think he's old. Let's have him look into the darkness for a change. And normally, I think most of the time, you want him looking into the light, but not for this one. There we go. You notice, just adding those eyes in brings them all to life. Really makes them look alive now. Alright. Well, I think that those eyes would look good on anybody's figure. But I also want to show you how we can push our eyes just a little bit further. So if we can make the eyes really bright and saturated, they could be an interesting point. So let's give it a shot here. I'm going to use my titanium white to sketch in the cornea. Yeah, take that white. Sketch in maybe where the light might be hitting. Now ignore where the iris is going to be, because we can subtract that iris out later on. Here the light just might be catching at the top of that iris part. This can take a lot of practice, but it can be fun. See how far you can push your eye painting. Now, if you're new to painting eyes, you might just stop with the black orbs we had in the previous step. It does look rather good, actually. Alright. Now those are like totally blown out, and he looks kind of like he has cat eyes. Now we're going to push those colors back with some inks. You know, some of our brown inks like Antelope Brown and Burnt Umber. Start with this Antelope Brown. We can almost make some look yellow. You can see the color in his eyes now. And with these large scale models, we can really push it. Yeah. I'm going to switch to my Burnt Umber ink here. Maybe we can get some striations there. I have to apologize for helicopters and stuff flying over. It's a busy city. So just bear with me on that. I'm going to switch to the sepia to kind of create some dark shadows. There. Really, you can do multiple layers of this if you really want to have a lot of nuance, but I think we'll do one more layer of the white, so it really looks like it'll be shining. Now, with the second application of the white, just be a lot more sparing. And then come back with a little bit of that brown ink and really make his eyes saturated and interesting. Now we can come back with some black paint here, maybe some Payne's Gray ink in that, really make it super dark and paint in the iris. So you can kind of subtract back some of what you painted. Yeah, I think that's starting to look pretty darn good. Now, if we really want to push our contrast up high and really add those extra little sparkles, we might consider that Geronimo's skin has some oil on it. And those oil spots really would reflect the light strongly. So I'm going to use pure titanium white and just use it very sparingly. Create those little sparkles. What's at the top of each of these? If I get quiet, it's because I'm holding my breath. Those few tiny little sparkles, be really sparing. Really sparing with that. Just at like the tip of his nose. Also, these little sparkles can go in where it's kind of wet, like his lips. Just a tiny bit going in there. Yeah, if we're really sparing with it, it'll only look like a highlight. Yeah, there we go. Maybe just a little bit right here. We'll put some in the hair too. Well, I really like that face, and I'm happy with it, so I'm going to keep it like that for now, and just finish up the rest of the figure, like his coat and his scarf and stuff here. Now, I was thinking his coat could be like a dull blue, maybe a bit like an army uniform. I'm going to take a bit of this Payne's Gray ink, mix it with one of these. Well, both of our blues here, I think. So we can get a couple tones here. We also want to mix in a little bit of white. Desaturate it a bit. Yeah, that'll be a good dark one. Maybe a few different tones. Try again here with our ultramarine blue. Nice dark tone. Mix in some white. There we go. Yeah, this needs a little more blue. All right. I think we're going to paint our highlights in first. Wear this blue coat. Just make sure this is in focus. Yeah, I think we'll end up painting in our highlights first. We can paint in some texture. It's just sort of random crisscrossy strokes. You can see how these lines kind of lead us upwards towards the face. We have these lights in there. Yeah, so let's paint in sort of this texture as we go. Back here in the background I might use the other color, which is more gray, still mixing in a bit of a highlight. I think we'll use sort of a stippling method for this. Let me give the impression of wool. Alright, now let's give it that coat of the blue that we want it to be. It's dark blue. Since it's so dark and blue, it would affect the surface really strongly. I'm watering down a lot to make it really translucent. So I don't want to run the risk of getting rid of this texture and everything else. The darker and more blue a color is, the more it will cover up. The more coverage it gets, the more strongly it will affect what you're doing. There we go. We're just glazing in that color. There we go. Notice how the color is really desaturated. I did that for a reason. I don't want it to distract from our focal point, which is their face. So by making it desaturated, it kind of doesn't draw the eye quite as much. It's also on the blue side, So that will kind of reinforce the warmer colors that we have there. It will make a greater contrast between the foreground and the background. That's because, as we know, blue and orange are on opposite sides of the color wheel. They contrast with each other. By having these blue tones, we can make our orange tones stronger. The orange tones being more saturated of the two will draw the eye, whereas the blue tones, not so much. That's because of the saturation difference, the contrast of saturation. Our eye tends to look at things that are more saturated first. Yeah. Let's just do a couple more layers, maybe a bit more of this lighter blue color. And things that are protruding more towards us. Still desaturated blue is just kind of lighter. I'll make it look like these. Getting a little bit more light. But maybe the interior of the coat could be deep, deep red. Very deep red. A bit of a gambit. And I don't know if I'm going to like that or not. It's kind of like almost a reddish brown, which is perfect. You don't want it to be a super bright red, because then that would draw the eye away from the face. Our eye really likes red. Hopefully this will just be a neat, interesting interior color. I'll work a little bit more on that once it dries. I might just have like feel like it needs a bit of I think his scarf needs a bit more highlight. So we'll mix an even more white tone. I'm going to apply that in there. Maybe start showing some details by tightening up our brush strokes. Maybe we want to practice our two-brush blending here. Why not? Who says we have to blend the whole thing the same way? Alright, I think maybe just a few more little details. Maybe this lining has a bit of sort of a tortoiseshell pattern, something like that. You know, it's like a pattern or something. Like that fabric has a pattern in it, that's what I mean. I'll give it a highlight as well. And then we'll glaze it. This might be a little strong. There we go. Well, I think we have a pretty nicely finished bust. You could maybe go through and add a few little smaller details or whatnot, but I'm happy with it for now. I hope you enjoyed watching me come together. Really hope you give this one a try. Send in some pics of your Native Americans or just flesh tones in general. I really love to see them. But until then, you go ahead and paint bravely, please.